expired after March. Until the end of this year, you are safe. But to give us all the details, I'm joined now by Transport Ministry spokesperson Ayanda Allie-Paine. Ayanda, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Okay, so explain exactly how this works, because people will be delighted to hear this, I'm sure.
Sally, thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to chat to you. Yeah, you're quite right, as you said in your intro. So if you have a learner's license or a driver's license card, a temporary driving license, or a professional driving permit that expires between the 26th of March 2020 and the 31st of December 2020, it's valid. So you can breathe a little bit. It's valid until the 31st of August 2021. And we did this because we noticed that the driver's license centres were really struggling. They were not coping with the demand for services. You'll remember that they were on lockdown with the rest of the country, especially that hard lockdown, level 5 and 4, where they were not working at all. We then saw a relaxation slightly in the regulations, and all of a sudden there was a flood of people who were coming to renew their documentation. But even as they tried to assist those people, you would get a COVID positive case, for example, at a DLTC, the whole centre would have to shut down for disinfection, and that means even more backlogs. And so the minister saw it fit to say, let's try and see if we can ease that congestion by granting motorists a little bit longer in terms of the reprieve. It doesn't mean that they relax and they stop attempting to book. It just means that the pressure is a little bit less now on them, but also on the staff at the DLTC.
All right, that's fantastic news. What happens if you are stopped by a member of the police and you have an expired driver's license that expired any time from the 20th, let's say it expired in June this year? You show it to them and say, I fall within the safe period. What do? Do you need a letter? Is it simply that you just show them your license and show them when it expired?
Ideally, Sally, that should be what happens. But we have seen that the reality, especially in your outskirts and far-flung area, the message does take a little bit longer to trickle down. So you'll see in your hubs such as Cape Town, Johannesburg, Durban, that message will resonate and resound and be loud and clear immediately. But then you'll there are some pockets of the country where they would not have received this. It should not be the case. I must stress that. But if as a motorist are then confronted by a traffic officer who is oblivious to this new dispensation, you can just explain. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can print out a government gazette and carry it as proof. It's not necessary, but this is just for you to be safe.
Yeah.
We also know that there are some traffic officers who will try and solicit a bribe, also something that should not happen, but this would be for your protection. In the worst case scenario, where you are fined by a traffic officer or you are charged a penalty fee at a DLTC, you can make representation to RTIA, the Road Traffic Infringement Agency, in writing, and outside of Gauteng, because they don't practice the ARTO yet, you can appear before the magistrate to refute that fine. There's a Section 56 notice, so you can refute that.
Ayanda, we're losing the line, but I do have one quick question. I mean, certainly what you're saying is going to be a huge relief to people perhaps planning coastal long-haul trips, to know that they don't have to try and squeeze in an appointment to renew that license. They've got 8 months in next year to get it done. Does this also apply to people who've perhaps lost their licenses or who've had their licenses stolen in this period?
So they would have to have some sort of proof, because these are isolated cases and they're not widespread. So they would have to have their affidavit. They'd have to appear before the driver's license testing centre and plead their case. Now, very quickly to mention that, transport is a concurrent function. So the DLTCs fall under your provinces and your municipalities. They can make an appeal to the provincial officers in transport, but also the municipalities. The DLTCs themselves will deal with those issues on a case-by-case basis.
Because normally what happens, you would go to the police station and get an affidavit written to say that it's been lost or stolen. Is that going to tide you over?
So that should tie you over depending on what the requisites would be at that particular DLTC. If you go there and you say, here's my situation, they can either say to you, go and get an affidavit, and then you'd need to apply online, try and get a slot, and then appear or give us some sort of proof. If you have a copy, maybe you have an email of your driver's license, they would be the ones to help you with the operations and what to do on the ground. But yes, I'm just appealing for calm. I am appealing for patience. These are peculiar times that we're in.
Indeed.
Sally, I'm sure you and I never dreamt that we'd be dealing with a pandemic of this nature.
No.
So I am just dealing with the Christmas gift. That's a bit of a grace period. We are asking in return just for a little bit of leeway and patience from the motorists.
Ayanda, thank you so much. You have definitely delivered a Christmas gift to a number of people. That's our Transport Ministry spokesperson, Ayanda Allie-Paine. I'm just going to repeat it. So if your licence expired after the 26th of March, right up until the end of this year, so literally if your licence expired today, you don't have to stress. Keep it with you. If you're stopped, you're in the grace period. You will have until the end of August next year to actually sort that licence out. That applies to learner's licence, driver's licences, temporary licences, and also professional licences.